It's me, Cwazywabit. Welcome back. We're on part two of the Tech Talk 3 hour video that Star Citizen released. Gone through the first one. It was very interesting. It was more along the lines of the server side of things and how that's sort of evolved over time. I've not seen this current part yet, so you'll be watching it at the same time that I do the first thing. And I left it in such a point where Jared was just about to get on to the next subject. So let's drop back in and carry on.
Now I want to talk about Tech Preview. So we used Tech Preview when we launched 4.0. Technically, 4.0 didn't launch until end of January this year. That's when it went to live. It was on Tech Preview at the end of last year. And we made these statements that we were going to use Tech Preview in order to bring these new things in and maintain the stability of live. It took 8 months. Correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think we did a Tech Preview between January and late August, early September.
Yep.
And now
a little bit of engineering in the last one.
The Vulkan stuff and the graphic stuff. Talk to me about Tech Preview, why we're doing it, how it's working, and let's just start there. I'll follow up when you're done.
Yeah. So, I mean, let's start with we didn't have Tech Previews in, let's say, April of last year, right? We started this idea of having Tech Previews last year, right? So it's a new kind of tool that we have. And obviously we use Tech Previews in the server meshing lead up, right? To validate key assumptions, to actually isolate the testing. If you remember when we did the major technical previews on the 3x branch for server meshing, it was taking the actual previous build with server meshing technology. So uninfluenced by new code, uninfluenced by the current patch, something we know is kind of in a stable range that we can use to test the technology alone, right? It's also a way to de-risk, just again bringing that in the stream and then going Cortez maneuver. Now we're stuck with it. We're moving forward, but and so the Tech Preview has been invaluable for that, and especially for the server meshing project, that's been a super important tool because we just don't have always the ability to replicate what players are going to do, and to be honest, even with bots and virtual players and whatever, it's never the same. Then 4,000 players filling ships with hot dogs,
And right now we're using it for graphic stuff. How's that going?
Yeah, so this Tech Preview that we're bringing in is more than that, actually, like behind the scenes, right? This is literally, I told you about the SC patch, so all the patches this year have been coming from SC patch. The Tech Preview contains all changes that we've brought to our mainstream. This is where the engine development happens. This is also where we bring back some technology from Squadron 42 back into Star Citizen. And we are moving all of this together up to SC patch. So this will now become, when we're happy with all the testing that we got through on this, and it checks all the green lights, this will become the new baseline from which we build patches. And so right now, this includes, about 8 to 9 months of graphics changes, right, which have not seen the public yet. And so a lot of Vulkan changes, obviously, to the great pleasure of our great Ali Brown, who really wants us to finalize this merge so that we can bring this into players. And there's some great stuff in there. So a lot of Vulkan optimization, Vulkan changes, but also in a way for us to test all of these changes that we've been doing to the core engine rendering outside of the lab, because we have a graphics lab internally that we test on, but it never, again, there's never anything like shipping it to players and having all the different kinds of hardwares and configs and settings and driver versions that we need. And so the majority of the stuff in this Tech Preview is player facing, but there's a ton of backend tooling that comes with that. A major update to the editor with some new material edition systems and light group systems that are in dire need of coming in, and a major upgrades to our scripting system that power missions, right, which the mission teams are Elliot and his team are like, when is it going to be done?
For that, yeah, no.
Yes,
that's. I'm glad you brought that up because I had actually forgotten that underneath that, it looks like it's just for the graphics, everything. But yes, no, the mission, we call it Mission 2.0. We call it a couple different things internally, but they are chomping at the. You already said that. I'm reusing the same. Sorry, I saw a comment from Salty and Mike that said, "Talk about session girth," and I laughed and wasn't listening to anything you were saying for like 30 seconds.
Okay,
because
that's cool.
It's a good joke.
It's a good joke.
It was a good joke.
Now, to be clear on the mission tooling there, right? This is part of Mission 2.0. It's a prerequisite, but it's not the Mission 2.0 system. That's a much larger endeavor that we're still on. But this time it's tooling, right? So if you know, some players are tech savvy here, it's basically a visual scripting system that we're upgrading massively, which was, I think we've demoed this years ago at this point, but it's called the Subsumption at the time, and it's now called StarScript. And so the StarScript system is basically taking, you know, the tooling that the teams are using now and making it much more reliable, robust with syntax checking, error checking, validation, auto layout, stuff like that the teams really need to build more quality missions.
I'm sorry, let me get this straight. You took a new feature set and you took the base word for it and then added star in front of it and called it that?
No,
like they do with everything. So Star Engine, Star Cloth, all the others.
we renamed Subsumption, which was the original name, and then we put star in front of it. Yeah, exactly. That's right. Hey, we have a theme, all right? We're going with it. I'm rolling with it.
As long as
it's mine, and I'm not getting rid of it.
By me every time you do it. All right. This tech preview is obviously important. It'll be in tech preview for as long as it needs to be in order to shore up and then be integrated and then become the new base from which we create our patches from. What is the next tech preview? Go ahead, say it.
Well, so what's behind this, right? This enables us to bring in, I'm going to go back to streaming just to build the excitement. No, I'm joking. So off of our main technology stream is another feature that's been built there that needs all of this to work, and that's the engineering gameplay tech preview. That's right behind it. So the moment we can bring in the base tech preview changes, then we'll be able to do to run the next testing on engineering gameplay straight off of that patch. So that's going to be super interesting.
Yeah, so I want to be real clear with that. This is the next set of tech previews. This is. I want to go ahead and say, and I'm going to go ahead and say it so that if people can get angry at me and not you. Right now, we're using tech preview to test Vulkan and these and all these graphical stuff and all these mission changes and everything underneath and stuff like this. When this is done and get fully integrated, go to live and whatnot. The next thing is engineering. We desperately. I'm going to use the word desperately. We desperately want this tech preview with engineering out before the end of the year. Now, this is the middle of September. It's still October, November, December. That's still a lot of time. It's not any time when anybody would say soon. And that's no guarantee that we're even going to hit it. We've all been here. Somebody was joking, hey, drink it next time Jared says how long he's been here. Well, we've all been here. Lots of us. I've recognized some of these names for the whole time I've been here. We've all been here long enough to know that me saying it's our intention to get this before the end of the year is not the same as saying it will come before the end of the year. Just being honest with you here, but it is everybody's desperate intention to get this thing into tech preview at the end of the year. We want it, we need it, we're tired. We did 5-6 stories in engineering. I did like 2 or 3 CitizenCons with engineering. Like it's time. 300, kick that mother out under tech preview, please.
Although I think it's going to be good when it finally comes out.
I want to make sure that everybody's super clear on what that means.
Hey, but on this, I got a little segue for you.
All right.
So there's one thing that kind of proves the improvements, right, on the live service is that there's a lot less players on PTU and there's a lot less players on tech previews than before, which is a good thing, right? That means players want to play the real game, and I'm really happy about that. But it does mean if you want to help, join those tech previews, right? The more people we get, even if it's for a short period of time, it's really helpful because we get a more larger set of people that can try it out, and that gives us more data.
Yeah, I want to talk about something. I got to show you sparked something that's actually a bugaboo for me, and okay. I got a platform and I'm going to use it. So we did this change. We did this change this year. We went to what will be 10 or 11 patches throughout the entire year. This almost monthly cadence of live stuff. So you've got the live stuff, a new live thing going every month. People are like, put something new in the game. We've had something new every month. We've had a PTU every month that runs alongside it. Now we've got tech preview. This pace that we're at this year has forced us to split our audience and stuff like this. It's like, well, do you want to be playing the live game, or would you rather be playing the PTU version, or now with tech preview, would you rather be playing tech preview? And the reality is, we need everybody everywhere.
Where do you sit on the side of the fence? Drop it in the comments. Personally, I only play the live. I never play the PTU, just purely because, well, I want what I do to matter. I know it matters to them, but in terms of my gameplay, I want what I do to exist. I don't want it disappearing after a month. I haven't managed to get onto the tech previews as yet, but I do intend to go on there in terms of creating content. But yeah, what's your view on it? Where do you fit? Do you sort of split between? Do you do like myself and just do the live? What do you do?
The live version is the version of the game that we're making. That's the version we want. We want everybody to experience it. But we also need them for testing. So we want them to be in PTU. We also need them for the specialized testing. So we want them to be in tech preview. And it seems, and this is one of the reasons why I talked earlier that we're reevaluating the 2026 release schedule for this reason. We've created a situation where we want our players in too many places at once, if I'm allowed to speak honestly, and I'll find out when I check my team's messages afterwards. It's a thing that needs addressing. So and it's hard. It's hard. I don't know. Short of altering the schedule, which we're talking about, what more can we do to encourage people to participate in PTU and tech preview, other than us sitting here on the show and begging them? Is there something?
Yeah, we've got some ideas. To be honest, like, we're toying with a few ideas, like incentivization programs or things like that. But this is slippery slope. It's a very slippery slope. And I for me, I kind of like the kind of volunteer approach for this.
Yeah.
But you're right. Like, we do have an issue where, we're testing this, and we have the next patch is already cooking, and so it's like it's always rolling. I mean,
The cynic in me side of it, like, absolutely, there should be incentives. The players aren't the game developers. I know they're running a live system at the same time as running the development of it, but the people that they're wanting to go onto the PTU and test these things, like, a lot of people just want to play the game. So if they did something like, I don't know, you get, I don't know, you do 100 hours in the PTU and you get a ship. Maybe not that, but or some armor, or some specific armor that would normally go to, like, the subscription side of things. Something. It doesn't have to be game changing, but let's say treat it as if it's like what happens with the subscriptions. So you do so many hours in the PTU, you get this. If you submit so many bug reports that are valid, then you get this. Doesn't have to be much. Just hang a decoration or something like that. Something that rewards you for doing essentially their job in creating the game. What do you think? Drop it in the comments.
At the same time, it's a testament to our ops team that I want to salute one more time, because these guys are always on the clock. There's always a build going out, and so these guys are kicking ass. But
it's hard because we certainly don't want everybody playing nothing but PTU. Second a patch goes out there, the next week there's another PTU. It's like, oh, only play the worst, most broken version of Star Citizen. But we need your help testing it. But it's this weird catch-22 that I don't know that we have a real great answer for, other than adjusting the schedule, which we're looking at next year. And then it gets exasperated when we do timed events like Race for Stanton or whatnot, when it's like, okay, well, if you want these rewards that are only available during this period of time, then you have to be in live in order to get them. But then it's like, well, we got a PTU over here. Wouldn't you like to be in a PTU over here? It's like, well, no, I want to get the rewards that are over there. And, you know, we extended Race for Stanton. That helped with that a little bit. But it's just that there's no obvious answer to this. I'm pontificating on one of the interesting challenges of our development model that exists, that I don't think anybody really ever talks about publicly. And today we decided we were going to talk about a whole bunch of stuff. So
we're doing it live.
We're doing it live. It's one of those things we still need to figure out and address. BioNukes had a question. Hey, BioNukes, talk about one of those people that's been here as long as I have. It was a while back. I saved it, Bio. Why not have a set time for the servers in the back end to just reset every day? Why not just flip the switch every day, turn it off and turn it on again every day?
Well, so that's one thing I forgot to put on the list of things we've changed this year, right? Which is that we take maintenance windows. We used to never do that. Now, why not do this every day, right? The issue that you get is that it's not just resetting the server. So, you know, rebooting the servers, reloading the game shard from persistence and continuing, you're going to get right back in the same situation. So let's imagine, we're going to talk about cleanup and density a bit later, but let's go back to the 3.x days where we persist all the data in the shard and we have deep intersections. So a ship entered another ship, it's an intersection, is costing on the server. The server FPS is now shit, super low physics threads, you know, using all the resources. And then you're like, okay, cool, let's do a daily reset, right? It's going to fix that, right? So you go through it, you reboot it. Cool. Now, server reloads from persistence, and those ships are still intersecting. And so you're right back where you were. So if you would look at the graphs and you'd see FPS super low, 0 during the reset, 30, 5, instantly. And so, what we've done in the past for this is now we have way more systems to deal with like this to reclaim performance, right, for these cases. So first of all, we detect them, but also we do emit fresh shards periodically. So we kind of decide when that happens. But when we do massive maintenances, weekly maintenances, we don't take every week, but we do it when we have to make configuration changes or things like that. We'll take a downtime, and we're probably going to emit new shards or run the repair on some of those shards. And then that will help. So we kind of do that. We just don't do it systematically, because the reality is that's not completely how it works for the backend persistence side of this. And it's not something that we can solve easily because the conditions are too great. You need the shard to be live to solve these things, to be able to do it.
What about a traditional, like, every Tuesday scheduled maintenance period, like every Tuesday at 4 a.m. Eastern time, whatever? Yeah. Things go down for 2 hours and come back.
We're going towards that now, like where we basically right now you can almost consider that every Tuesday we try to do a maintenance. Typically early in the morning UK time is a good time in general, just because that's where the least players are playing typically. But that said, we don't take it every week because we don't always have to do it, and so sometimes it's not very necessary. But I'm an advocate to always take it, so that sometimes we use it to accelerate hotfixes. So in case you haven't noticed, we do hotfixes all the time, right? So we have this new deployment systems now, and we're able to roll hotfixes way faster. But when we roll a game server hotfix, it's going to take time to, what's the word that Ahmed uses? Percolate. It's going to take a while before it percolates, right?
Percolate.
Yeah. And so sometimes you can have a game shard that has 10 servers. 2 of them have the hotfix, the others don't have it. So depending on where you're at in the shard, you have the fix or not. And it takes a while before all the game servers actually run into it. Now, obviously, if it's an unstable build, it's going to be much faster, because then server crash, back new instance with the new build. But these maintenance windows give us the opportunity to also synchronize that with a client. hotfix when it's necessary. And so we can take everything down, patch the client, patch to all the game servers in one go, emit fresh shards if we have to, and then start again. And so that's why typically there's big changes that can come about in maintenances, and we want to use them more. Yeah, definitely.
All right. Well, we've completed our first hour. And
that was part one.
That was
organizational changes.
That was part one. Organizational changes. Let's take an interlude here. I'll ask you just a side question here. Let you get a drink or whatnot. With our last patch, what was the last patch? The August patch. 4.3. There was a big curiosity with the wolf on PTU right before we crossed the finish line. To release that, we discovered something that didn't show up in any testing and whatnot. Walk me through what happened with the wolf.
This is a beautiful one. That was fun. So yeah, like you mentioned,
it says that as if it's
walking
trauma.
up to 4.3. We're at the point where pretty much everything has been validated and tested, and there's something with the wolf that we're gonna try to do more in the future. Is that we try to respect what we call the art of surprise. Is that typically beforehand we used to put everything in a patch, go. Now for certain things we want to try to respect some level of surprise. We find that it's cooler for you guys when you discover things when it goes live and not necessarily on PTU 2 weeks before, right? And so we're trying
or in shows every week.
Or it shows every week, exactly, right? So and so the wolf is part of that. And so the wolf was going on PTU for validation because it was part of 4.3 release at the very last minute, right? So like I think 24 hours before, just to make sure everything's fine. Well, it turns out everything was not fine. And so we look at the reports. There was one crash that we had to solve, which was solved rapidly, but then we looked at some very curious reports. And so players would basically report, I forget the IC exactly, but something like, I landed with my wolf, exited the ship, and then was walking around. Then my friend took my wolf and flew away, and then the world despawned around me. So initially it sounds like a fluke report, but then a bunch of people reproduced it, and it was like, I have this. And so like, what is going on? And so typically then that's where our player relations team goes like, something's fishy on here. So we started to look into it, and so we assembled a quick crew to check this out. And now this is kind of skeleton crew because we're moving to release. To typically it's very late here in the I'm in the UK right now, so it's very late here in the UK. US teams, it's night for them, So just get this crew on together, start looking at this issue. And so basically the issue that we're seeing is that sometimes, when a bug starts with sometimes, it's going to be a fun one. So sometimes when you exit the wolf, you desync between the client and the server. And what actually happened is, if you looked at so we have this tool we call the server renderer, which allows us to basically view what the server sees, right? And so think of it like a side camera that we have when we have access to the game server, and then our game client, and you can see what the server sees. Right? And so you'd see my character get out of the wolf, with that super nice animation, exit, and he jumps at the end.
Yep.
Jumps off the ship. Wow, it's like super cool. And then I'm walking around on my client, everything's fine. Game server, I'm literally in EVA animation floating over the planet.
I wonder if it's the same thing or similar thing that caused the issue that people were having where your head would just disappear.
And the thing is, I can't exit this condition, right? No matter what I'll do on my client now, the server will always see me attached to the ship in EVA anim. So we're like, okay, what's going on, right? Now we start looking at this. So at this point, John Crew and I are, losing our minds trying to get a proper reproduction. But then we realized, we put new animations for this ship. So the Wolf was one of the new ships that have enter-exit animations, right, that are brand new, like just captured, import in the game, all that stuff. We don't do this all the time. And putting animations in the game is not just, put the anim in. It's like, it's timing, there's events to link them, there's linking them to the actor system, how they get triggered, inserting them into ship pipelines, stuff like that. And so we start debugging this. First step was, they probably forgot to put some of the seat events on it. So we do a first patch, we try it out. Now the QA guys come back like, Nope, still happens. So like, okay, I think if the timing is wrong on these events, so let's change that. No, I think we went through like 7 or 8 iterations of fixes to try to figure out what was actually happening about that exact animation and why the ship system was disconnecting it. We went into full debugging on the actor, so the actor is your character, and all the states it can go through, and we could just see the two differ, right? But it made no sense. Why is one working and the other working? So at this point, we're kind of running out of ideas, and so that's when I used a button. I called the bug smasher himself, Mark Abent, on the show. And so Mark came in and was as flabbergasted as we were about what the hell is causing this. And then so we went into a bit more debugging sessions. At this point, we're deep engine side physics and collisions to try to figure out what's going on. And then in the end, Mark just goes within, in the typical bug smasher fashion, just goes into what about gravity? And so we take a look at how the ships have physics grids. These grids have sizes and mesh sizes, and the animations is based on the geometry. And there was no gravity in the ship, 0, 0, 0, right? And so basically it was a combination of the physics grid, the fact that the actor on the server runs at a lesser resolution. So, your client, when you're in game, is at full resolution. The server doesn't run at full resolution when he's simulating your character. And so combination of this would make the server would actually reach the EVA state. So now you're floating in EVA, right? But with no gravity and no other movement, it will never solve itself. And he's also overlapping over the grid, which is too big. And so that was a bit of a combination of like blunders, from geometry to wrong physics grid to out of no gravity, and it made the bug also not 100%. It wasn't like I exit the ship and it happens. It would need to happen like it took about 10 to 15 times you would get it one time. And so, all right, so we fixed the bug. We get this in there. Internal QA validates it, and then to be able to properly validate it, as you know, we need players. And so that's where we mobilized you guys on PTU to come and try this out. And this was one of the best moments I've had testing in this game, where roughly 100 people showed up with wolves at Boondoggle on Hurston, and then 200 people are entering and exiting the wolf, right, to see if they get detached from the animation. It was a fantastic moment. And so yeah, that was a fun one to troubleshoot.
And that was your free audio only episode of Bug Smashers, as a nice little interlude there. I want to shout out Dennis Daniel, who's in chat right now.
What's up, Dennis?
Hi, Dennis.
I miss Mark Abent.
Miss you, man.
My man.
All right. Part 1, year of playability, our little Bug Smashers interlude. Folks watching, we've got another hour or 2 left, so we're going to be here for a bit. In case you're like, why would they talk about that? Whatever. We're getting there. Part 2, server meshing. Server meshing, past, present, future, static, dynamic, 3D. Benoit, I'm just gonna go get a Coke and a Cinnabon. I'll be back. Now, talk to me about server meshing, man.
Well, so obviously we launched server meshing end of last year. And we've been running a server mesh environment for now 7 months, 8 months, right? 9 months. We're not month 9 already. And so that's the static server mesh. And so that means we have territories. Just a quick recap for everybody. And so that means that we have a configuration for these territories, and we can pick different top-level object containers from the tree of the universe, and then we basically distribute them on different, resource servers. So at the moment, we run at a 10 game server per shard setup. And so that means that we basically distribute the key areas, on these 10 game servers. And that's how, when you transition from one zone to another, it's seamless, but you're moving from one server to the other. So we've been kind of taking the year to get used to being in a server mesh environment. And so that means we've discovered a bunch of gameplay bugs related to this. I think we talked about some of those in January, but that have been solved. But the For example, the quantum drive systems, didn't properly handle the transition. Sometimes we'd lose power in transition, and then that would cause the thing to reset, pull you out of quantum, things like that. That's one example, but there's a series of other issues that were related to that. But more importantly, we've been also learning about how to properly distribute the load of the simulation. So now we have this tool, we have this map. It's not the end of it. Right now, every patch this year, we've changed the configuration. I don't think we've had a single static configuration since the beginning of the year. Every patch has been different. And so obviously, we've tried to make sure that we dedicate resources to where there's an event, right? So if it's a SD location or a Hathor locations or Stormageddon locations, we've kind of reconfigured the mesh at each release to basically guarantee some server power at each places, because we know that people congregate in these areas. We've also learned a couple of things, like, because the teams that make content don't necessarily always talk to the team that make the tech, right? And so so where you put those locations or how many there are is important, right? And so that we kind of learned that through the Hathor moments where like they were a bit too close and we couldn't distribute them properly because of other limitations, which I'll get into in a bit. And so we've changed that config every time. And so it's been really a good learning experience for the team. We've also solved a bunch of issues in the static mesh related to performance. And so we've talked about this before, but the hybrid, we talked about stability of game servers right earlier, but the hybrid is at the center of this. This is the networking component that you're connected to when you're playing the game. He's doing the replication, he's doing the binding and all that stuff, right? And for this guy, the stability score is 0. Meaning, if there's one crash, we don't ship the patch, right? That's it, right? That thing needs to run perfectly at all times.
Yeah.
And the kind of quality metrics that we expect from the hybrid are very, very intense. Like the speed at which they transfer packets or accumulate packets and transfer it, and between areas and elements has to be very, very, very fast at all times, or else you get rubber banding, you get desync, things like that. And so there's been a lot of performance improvements behind the scene, especially I think just before Stormageddon, or is it after? At this point, it's a bit of a blur. But I know that we found a couple of key optimizations that have really helped the hybrid maintain stability across some of the big binds that we were seeing. Again, binding is this process that when your client needs to bind to an area, it means he's receiving updates for an area.
Yeah.
This whole binding up process is a bit costly on the hybrid, especially when there's big areas being bound. And so optimizations have gone into that, and that has helped desync quite a bit. I mean, there's always room there to improve improvement, and the team are still actively working on this. That's never going to be the end of it. But it's much improved since the release of 4.0. Like I hope the rubber banding is getting a lot better every patch. Like we're hoping to, always cut some of those big bottlenecks across as we go.
I've not noticed a huge amount of it. I play on a half decent system. It's not the best system, but I've not really noticed much in the way of rubber banding.
Okay.
So that's static server mesh. We also learned a couple of things on how to distribute those locations. So the cost of a location, right, and the amount of players is not necessarily the same weight. Funny enough, a lot of players in the same place. Let's say you have an empty room, right, with nothing in it, and I can pack 300 players there, no problem. Server's good, right? No problem. If I add AI in there, we start getting into issues, right? If I add ships in there, bigger issues. So that if you want the cost of the location and the multiplied, not necessarily multiplied, but factored in by the number of players there, is what kind of is the cost of an area, and how we should distribute we should distribute the computing power that we pay for to run the game. And so we've been learning a lot about this in all these experiments we've been doing, and that's informing dynamic server meshing, right? Meaning what the algorithm needs to be in order to properly distribute the load of the simulation to the different components in the game that can do the replication.
This weird equation. This is in all the factors of, all right, obviously how many players are there? Sure. What is the resource footprint of the location itself? obviously. How many ships are present? Because it's not all ships are created equal. Our process of making ships have changed over the years. Some ships are more efficient than others. So it's okay. What's the resource footprint of the ships in the area? What's the resource footprint of the location itself? What's the resource footprint of the people in the area? And then where's the next closest area? Like, because with Onyx facilities, we distributed 100 of them and went up. But like you mentioned with Align and Mine, our one of our big learnings, we'll say learnings. It's a nicer word than mistake. Was positioning was where we put them and whatever. We weren't able to separate them into the shards that we wanted to. So being at one and being at the other one just doubled up the performance hit. Somebody in chat said it seems like everything CIG does is a test. Yes.
Yeah.
I think that was Flymo Ninja, if I remember. Flymo Ninja. Hey man. Yes, everything we do is a test. We're learning. There's a reason I used to end these shows with what did we learn this week. Don't ever think that no aspect of game development isn't intricately tied up with the process of learning. Not for us, for you, for everybody. It's like this. So yeah, we are learning as we do this, and that's what Benoit's talking about it. So dynamic server meshing tomorrow, next week. What you got?
So no, well, I'm not going to advance a date, but I can tell you that there's multiple things that compose dynamic server meshing, right? Obviously, the team is working on those aspects right now, right? The key aspects that dynamic server meshing will bring is so a kind of arbitrary subdivision, right? Meaning that we could assign a server to anything that's a streaming group. So inside this big tree, right? You've seen the PES discussions where we show how kind of the data is laid out in one big giant scene tree. Any of those nodes that are deemed a streaming group can actually have a server actually having authority over that entire area. And so DSM will definitely bring us the ability to kind of arbitrarily subdivide, where we're no longer tied to these territories or this territory map. That's the first big thing we're gonna gain from dynamic server meshing, and we're working on that part at the moment, right? Which is basically how we can move these streaming groups from one server to the other, how authority is transferred, who's managing it, what component is taking care of that. So that's under development right now. There's also a lot of I want to say parallels or similarities between dynamic server meshing and instancing, right? And so we've talked about that we're working on instancing. That's also part of this work, right? And so we technically already have the mechanics of instancing in the game in the form of the instance hangers, right? Which basically allows you to have multiple stacked areas on top of each other, but you get to see only one, and only one of them is bound to your client and replicated to your client. Historically, if we go back in the 3x days when we put this in, initially the instancing was actually not working from the networking side, and so you would replicate all the hangers that were at that location, even though you couldn't see it, which was even worse. Now you actually get assigned the proper tag on your character, and so when you actually take the elevator, it's bringing you to an actual instance, which is basically yours. So the instance tech that we're building on top of that will basically leverage some of the concepts we're putting into dynamic server meshing, because we want to be able to distribute those instances across the mesh, right? And so right now they're location bound, right? But we want to not be able to just have them location bound, but have any of the servers take those off so that we can share the load. Again, optimizing the distribution of the simulation of the computing workload that we have across what players are doing. And so that when you enter an instance, we can guarantee a certain level of performance without needing to have a little, dude at the back going like, oh, we need to change the territory map for this, right? Basically. And so we're actively working on all this stuff right now to bring us to the dynamic part of server meshing. And obviously, with that, even though this is not our focus right now, right? We are still planning to go to higher player counts, but this is totally not our priority right now. Our priority is really on getting the functionality and the computing workload properly distributed automatically. Exactly.
I'm glad you say we're not. That's not our focus at the moment. I talked earlier in the show about us sometimes acting like we invented the wheel when it's one of those things that other people, other games have had and stuff like this. Lots of games have some version of server meshing.
Yeah.
Famously, what's the other one? The Dune game, whose name escapes me at the moment. They did a big thing on their version. Awakening. They did a big thing on their version of server meshing and stuff. How is ours different than what other things? I'll give you a hint.
Question.
3D. How is ours different from what you're seeing in every other game? Just because I see this come up. I see, I watch the YouTubes and the Twitches sometimes, and I see people like, they keep acting like server meshing. They fucking invented it and whatever. Oh, there's my one swear. It came. Sorry, Tyler. Why is our server meshing different?
Well, so you're right. Like, it's not like server meshing isn't already like a thing, right? Like in the past, like even, Ultima Online had a server like transitions,
right
now they were not necessarily seamless, but you still had server transitions and gridding, right, which is a typical approach, which is you take the world, you split into a grid, and then you have servers between them. And then the rest of the different strategies come from how the servers communicate to each other, right, and how the state is distributed and how you transition from one to the other. And I think that the areas where our approach differs is that we've extracted the simulation from the game and the replication of the game. So replication is how game server and client stay in sync, right? And so when you're in an area and somebody opens the door opens on your client. That's because it's been opened on the server, and it's also because somebody else had authority to send that message to open the door. So this is all replication, right? Well, normally you have one game server and he does both replication and simulation, right? So we've taken the Star Engine, we've extracted the networking from it, so the replication into the hybrid. Now we call him the hybrid now because it's a first stage of server meshing, right? But the hybrid has all the networking components. He has the state in his memory. He holds all of the information for the shard, and he does the replication. So you're connected as a client to the hybrid. So you're not connected to the different servers you're actually on. The game server you're actually that's simulating your area is actually, you're not even on it. You're not even an active connection to that server. You're actively connected to the hybrid. And the game servers are actually clients with authority, if you want, right? If we simplify. And so that's one area where it differs. The second one is how we separate space, right? And you alluded to it, which is that our territory mappings or mappings to how the authority is managed is in 3D space. So it's not a grid. It's fully made in 3D space. And so that means that we can have it's 3D space and a tree, right? So which is the other bit. And so what that means is that if I take I'm going to try to make that simple. Let's say I'm on the yellow server, right? And suddenly the yellow server, there's not enough players there and the location is a bit low cost. Then we might want to despawn that server. Well, we can transfer the authority from everything the yellow server is doing to its parent. There is a parent, right? Whereas when you're doing gridding, that's a bit of a different model. In the past, I've seen solutions for meshing which include servers, like adjacent servers talking to each other, for example, things like that. The client actually disconnecting from one server, connecting to the next, right? Which in all of these cases, these were things that created side effects that we didn't want. So in the past, we did try these things. Like if I go way back when we started the server meshing projects, that was the first approach, was like a bit more classical, but we realized to properly offer what we've shown in, for example, the meshing demo Paul did a couple of years ago, or what you're actually playing now on live, to be able to have like bullets completely traverse the transition and hit on the other side of it. Like we needed to have a solution that was native to all how we were doing it. The bet behind it was that the hybrid was going to be fast enough, and so far it seems like it's working out. Though it is a lot of work to get it, to keep it at that speed with all the needs that we have. So that's I would say was the differences in the approach. And every game is going to have its own approach, right? Tailor-made to its gameplay, right? So it's, in our case, we're trying to make the biggest universe ever, and so we need the most scalable way to approach it. Also, we've taken the most difficult route, I feel. But
I think you need to adopt CR hands a bit more. You were doing the thing, and I kept like, no, little server inside a bigger server. I'm like, you use your CR hands. It would help. You know, this server inside this server. So when this server disappears, the server above it can get the authority. I'm like, I'm just over here like, use the CR hands.
Oh shit! Yeah, that was a missed opportunity.
If only there was a time. If ever there was a time for CR hands.
Yeah, that's true.
All right. So 3D server meshing, and separating everything, so connecting people to the hybrid instead of the server, so that things can connect and carry through from one server to another server seamlessly and stuff. Anything else you want to say on server meshing before we move on?
No, I think that's pretty much the state of it. Like, we're advancing on the dev for it. Obviously, we don't want to bring in destabilized changes to the game, right? And so we're making sure that these are going to be tested first. We will go to a tech preview when we feel it's the right time. Right now, it's not the right time, and so we're still working on these aspects. But that's our objective: is to, we're not going to do a big, dynamic server meshing is up, right? That's not going to be how we're going to roll this out.
Right.
We will most likely be bringing elements of meshing into play, right? Like the ability to despawn servers in areas that are not being simulated, the ability to scale up the mesh dynamically from the territory map, and then later on possibly go into, then the instancing support that goes through it, and then after that, the final jewel of like dynamic resubdivision and reallocation.
Sorry, I didn't mean to laugh in the middle of what you're saying. Don't Please in the chat goes, I'm really glad I was here to see Disco's last show. I've survived this long, man. All right. So, part 3.
Big tickets.
Oh, stretch, part 3.
It's a good idea.
Doing?
It's looking fabulous from here.
Oh, weird. All right. This section I call big ticket items. These are various issues that at some point in the year have generated some amount of angst, aggression, frustration, or any other word you can think of to describe Tyler Wicken. He's watching. Let's start with the big one: freight elevators.
Yeah.
Now, I already did a big 5-minute thing explaining. Oh, there's a delay. He just popped up. Freight elevators. Where are we at now? What's happening? What happened? What do you want to tell us about freight elevators?
Let me pull up my notes.
Okay.
So freight elevators is one of our hero squads, right? Now, your previous interventions, that came way too late in our planning, right? And so that's one thing that, I think that if we could go back in time, that squad would have started way, way, way earlier. And so I've got a bunch of discussions.
To be clear, work had started earlier. We hadn't had the hero squad on it.
Correct, exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
Good clarification. And so let me go through some of the stuff that we've been going through on freight elevators in general. So to start with, obstruction issues, right? And so a lot of the issues that we ran into were related to how the elevator actually detects obstructions and or contents. And so, for example, blocking the doorway, item being positioned on the roofs of the planetary freight elevators. Now, a lot of this, by the way, like I'm going to talk more about the planetary versions of it, which are 10 times worse for some reason. But in terms of obstructions, like you could leave items on top of the elevator, and then it was detected as an obstruction, right? And so these obstructions, first of all, the checks were super rough. And so they would go, there's something, I'm not going to move, which is what a bit like, come on, So
somebody would put a smoltz bottle on top of the freight elevator.
Correct.
And the whole damn thing would stop working.
Exactly. Well, yeah, exactly. That would brick the whole elevator until that was removed. But incidentally,
MedPen. Oh my God, it was MedPen so small.
Yeah. No. Yeah, but see, that's even worse because there's a problem with how the items are set up, right? And so when we create a prop or we create an item, there's a bunch of things that go into it. physics proxy, weapon proxy, all kinds of things that go on top of it. One of them is the bounds of the item, right? Which is not, there's multiple bounds in case you thought it was just a sphere or like a shape or a rectangle. There's more than one bounds, but long story short to say that a lot of items have incorrect bounds. And so what that does is that when you leave them on a flight elevator, they might clip into the elevator, right, itself. And so couple that with the bad obstruction checks, that could cause some really crazy exploits. Like, for example, leaving, I think, a med pen on the freight elevator, it would clip through the platform. You couldn't even see it. So you'd be like, there's nothing on it. And then it would still block it, right? I think that actually is not completely fixed. So we still have to, the squad still has to get to all of these items. And so for the bounds issue, what we're doing is we're adding a lot more checks on how the things are submitted again beforehand. So we're revisiting all bounds for items, right, and how their setup is made to make sure that none of them can be in that situation. So we're kind of doing a system-wide check on this in order to make sure that when we get into these situations, it's going to work the way we think it should. There's also this is all you'll see, it's all super interrelated, right? Items that would get destroyed but would no longer have geometry, but would still be considered obstructions. And so that was a very egregious one, I think, that we saw very early, which is there was a way for you to destroy an item. Its geometry would disappear, but it would leave the entity present. And so now that's it. That elevator is gone. You need tools to see that entity, right?
I mean, at least with the med pen or something, people could zoom in and try to scan the pad, try to scan the thing, and try to find it. People in chat are already like, "Oh, great! You've just told everybody how to do it." It's like this. It's. We're also telling folks how to fix it. We're trying here. It's a delicate needle to thread here, but. That at least there was something people could do if they knew about it, which is why we're talking about it, to try to find it and remove it. This next one though, the geo's gone.
Yeah, that's it. This one was the worst one, right? And so the thing too with the freight elevator bugs related here, like some of them were set up of the actual freight elevator geometry, right? Actually, that was a regression. So it was a bug that got fixed and was reintroduced. Which is the shape, because we have multiple types of freight elevators, right? We have like the horizontal one. We've got ones that are vertical, some with doors, some without. And so there was some of those best setup. The planetary ones were especially egregious in that case. And so there's still some bounds check to be added, but this is all, when you got all these messages about, obstructions, then that was all related to this. One of the other issues we had with freight elevators was actually one of the first ones we had to fix, which is that the freight elevator is set up into two things. There's the kiosk and then there's the platform, right? And so the kiosk hosts the manager component. He's the one that's managing the stuff, right? And the platform is kind of slave to the manager. So there was an issue where, depending on how an area would stream in or stream out, the platform or kiosk would stream in first or stream out last, right? And this caused these two components to now be disconnected. So they would not find each other anymore. And so in those cases, that entire location was dead. Like that was it. That location, game over, right? Because they would never find each other. There was no model in place or process in place to go and try to fix that. And so this is, in part of what we do on the hero squads, we've done the same with the transit system, which is we introduce self-healing approach, right? And so in this case, the system would actually retry to connect. So if a manager doesn't have its connection to its platform, then it would get retried, right, over time until it actually connects. And so this way, even in the case where we do run into an issue where they disconnect, they could still reconnect. And so that solved the issue. That was actually rolled out in a hotfix.
Sino says, are elevators CIG kryptonite? Elevators are the kryptonite of every game development team in the world. Elevators and doors.
Yeah, doors and elevators,
man.
Doors and corners, man. let's continue on our list of bugs with freight elevators, right? The UI and platforms could get out of sync. And so this is where the platform will have content. So there's clearly a box on the thing, and the UI is showing that it's empty, right? And so that prevents you from, basically makes the whole thing inoperable, because now you can't ship your box at all. And so in this case, I think that the reconnection, the streaming reconnection, actually solved this by self-healing, but also the UI will requery multiple times to be able to make sure it's always updated. This is a side effect of us of the game teams trying to cache a bit more data than they should, and so now it cached an empty elevator, and so that's a weird state. So a bit of background on how the platform actually works, right? So you've got your inventory system, right? Your warehouse, that's where your things are stored. The inventory system has that, right? So you can query for items in it. You get the list of what's in it. You can unstow items from it, which means bring them into the game world and physicalize them, or you can stow them into it. The freight elevator and the ship cargo platforms are actually using an abstraction on top of that called the inventory container. And so the inventory container can be open or closed, right? And so we had an issue so what that means is that when the inventory container of the platform is closed, that means that all of the items that are physically on it are actually stowed. It's opened, it means that all of the items that were in this inventory container are in the game world and being acted upon. So when you unstow things on your platform, that's what happens. There was a weird case where, in certain cases, if there was a delay in the back end, right? So the back end systems for all these operations have queues of operations that run, and so they can handle the delay, right? But in this specific case, there was a weird state where what's actually unstowed in the state of the container would be desynchronized. And so we've added another repair flow for this that would actually detect the state of it and actually resynchronize it in the cases where that would happen. This was because we didn't properly handle failures. And so in the case where an unstow would fail, the state would now be, in a weird situation. And so now we do the proper error handling, which is another thing that we've changed in our processes for development, is that error handling is now part of code reviews. So we really need to make sure every single, that sounds like basic, right? But I'm just saying the way it is, right? Some cases were not handled, and so you need to handle those failures.
You wanted open development.
Yeah, that's it. It's all warts and issues, right? And same thing for door states, right? So whether the door is open or closed, right? After stream in and out or server crash, right? Would sometimes clash. And so the kiosk can think the door is closed, but it actually is open. And so we do the same now. We can actually properly set the flow back properly. So one of the lessons we've learned with freight elevators in general, and all the issues I just went through, and the reason why we ran into them, is need way more multiplayer testing. I think that the major key behind it is that the teams have spent time on the in-hangar elevator, right? So we ran into some issues with in-hangar elevator for sure, and there's still issues there. But the big difference with the resource drive event was that we were driving players to the freight elevators, and there's more than one player interacting with it, right? And so that's one area where we have improved our testing and our testing approaches so that they're properly tested multiplayer, and not just as when we reach PTU or in focus test. Now it's like part of the general testing for these open areas.
You've mentioned something called self-healing.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. What's self-healing?
Well, so self-healing is basically when we add functions to a system to detect that it's in a bad state and attempt to fix it, right? And so you could call it a kludge in some areas, right? Sometimes it's not the right thing. But I think that in this case, for a lot of the systems that we have, where we are working on a replacement, for example, and we're trying to keep this one running, self-healing will come in and basically rectify the situations, right? We have the way our game is made with our streaming system makes some trivial things in a normal game very complex. And sometimes we have run into these issues where the game teams can't really identify what's specifically causing an issue. They just know it happens, right? And so in the past, we used to wait for the key engineers that can actually decipher these conditions to come in. But these guys are obviously, everybody's swamped with work, and so sometimes the delay was so long that you guys as players would have to deal with the condition for long periods of time. And so self-healing is basically an approach where we're telling the game developers, well, while you're investigating the proper root cause for this, provide a self-healing alternative, right, which keeps the system running properly. And they're at self-repair, basically.
There's an interesting,
Basically like a plaster.
I don't know, maybe not, maybe interesting is not the right word. There is a forever thing that happens in chat. It's happened during the course of this show. It's happened in every YouTube comment and everything. So this idea that every developer can work on every single thing, that if this person is over here making a loading ramp for the Zeus, they could be better spending that time over here fixing network code and stuff. And like, why are you working on that when you should be working on this? And the answer is almost always because that's what that person does.
Right.
They can't do anything else. That's not what they're. You know, it's like looking at a cook and asking them if they can fish. It's like, well, it's sort of kind of related. It's game dev, but it's not the same thing. But even within the disciplines, that's a common thing. But even within the disciplines, even within engineers, there are still focuses and affinities and stuff. And there's still, even within a field of engineers, there are still many things where, and it's no slight against the person or whatnot. It's just this person has that specialty and that person has that specialty and that person has that specialty. And you often come up to a thing where it's like, well, we can't make any progress on this until we can get it in front of this person. And that person has already got this other thing in front of them and that other thing in front of them and stuff. So it's another way. It's not, it's another way. I don't know what I want to say, what I'm trying to say here. I'm trying to illustrate that it's like anything, like priorities and like anything else. There are usually, if you're asking the question, why aren't they fixing this or why aren't they working on that? The answer is almost never. It's because we don't want to. It's correct. Because it's in line. It's in line. It's just that simple. It's in line.
Yeah, we do have a lot of hyper specialization too, right? And so you're right. Like even game programmers are not necessarily interchangeable for everything, right? That said, our approach, by the way, for our game teams is very multidiscipline, very fluid, right? Which does enable a lot of this, right? Like we have engineers who are able to go from one system to another in the game code, right? But when you have to do cross-discipline things, that's where now you need a concerted effort, and that's when it gets queued up.
Before we move off of freight elevators, what's the thing that's happening you go to Wicklow, you'll put all of your recipe stuff on the thing. It goes, okay, it takes it, it goes down, it completes the mission, and then doesn't give you your thing back up. And now you're just out those items because the mission completed, but it hasn't given you your reward. And people have just wasted their time on a Wicklow. What is that?
So I think that most of those issues are a lot of those are still being investigated actually right now, right? In order to really figure out what's happening. It is, these systems are intertwined, right? The reward system, for example, is part of the mission flow, right? Whereas the freight elevator is just the vessel, right, to deliver this. And so there's many reasons and timing what this could happen, right? And so I don't have a proper answer for this. I didn't dive on this one specifically, but I can tell you that I know the team is actively working on this one because it's a key. I mean, it's especially for Wicklow rewards. Like internally, Wicklow rewards is like the hey guys, like come on, let's get it priority on this one.
Chat's starting a campaign to send Wicklow to Kleischer.
That'd be a nice Christmas gift.
So at the beginning of freight elevators, we're gonna from freight elevators, we'll move on to our next thing because there is a kind of an obvious sounding solution to this when we're talking about putting med pens and small bottles on things, and then entities where the physicality has disappeared, but the entity is still there, and it seems like an obstruction. Cleanup, entity cleanup seems like it'd be the obvious thing. Just crank that dial up to 500 and clear that shit off of there every 2 minutes, and it seems like a good fix. Talk to me about entity cleanup. We're seeing ships left everywhere. We're seeing trash left everywhere. The Raptor's not here yet.
The ships I don't mind. I quite regularly go out and salvage those.
What can you talk to us about
Sure.
entity cleanup?
Well, so one thing I think we touched on this a bit in January, right? That one of the things that we put into 4.0 was the beginning of some physics cleanup, right? Now, since then, right, since the beginning of the year, we've unified a lot of the cleanup systems, right? So, namely, we had an abandoned vehicle tracking system. We have the physics intersection cleanup system. We have the actual density manager, and so now all of this has been kind of unified into one platform. And so what we're able to do with this now is we have density classes. So depending on the type of item, we can define the density class, which basically allows us to say no more than X in a volume of Y for this kind of item, right? And obviously there's way more parameters. I'm just trying to keep it simple so we can understand what it does. We've recently added the ability for designers to basically change those density classes, basically vary these density classes by region. And so now they can say in this location, make this super aggressive, make this less aggressive, right? And so the density manager part of this is really about just items in the game world that are dynamic that we want to make sure we keep at a manageable level, right? And so if you start putting water bottles in one place, at some point it'll start cleaning up because they're in the same volume, and the density class of the water bottle will inform how many we want to keep and how we want to do that. There's also lifetime cleanup. So things we want those to live, but we want them to disappear after a certain amount of time. So we've added that functionality in, so that's a lot better. And then vehicles come into play. So abandoned vehicles, we've been tuning this since the beginning of the year behind the scenes. This and the physics cleanup. So the abandoned vehicles is basically when you leave a vehicle completely abandoned. So no passengers, nobody's left on it. It's left on a planet. You leave it there. Already, it's put on a timer, right? And so at some point we'll have to clean this up, right? If it gets interacted with, if passengers come into play on it, whatever, that revives it, resets the timer, right? I think if I remember right, that's set to something like 2 hours right now, something like this for abandoned vehicles, regardless of class for now. So that is something we want to add, which is basically change the density class for larger ships so that maybe they go faster. This is the kind of thing we need to keep tuning. And then so the abandoned vehicles will actually clean up those areas, right? Now, with the new system we have now coming in, we'll be able to override these values per region. And so for planet-side locations where we know there's going to be traffic, we can make that a lot more aggressive. And the last part of the cleanup system is the pink slip. I call it the pink slip, which is, hey, my ship turned pink and bam, it's gone, right? Which is basically when areas of the game where your ship is entering into a deep intersection with something else, right? And this is true of all areas, right? So if something enters deep intersection for a number of frames based on the size of the entities, size of the area, we will clean it up, right? We're going to first turn it pink, full pink, for a certain amount of time, and then poof, it disappears. The reason for that is because the servers are still very much physics bound. And there is no currently, I'm not saying it's impossible, but currently there is no elegant way to kind of break those collisions automatically and cleanly. It typically creates these maelstrom of physics problems when you try to fix it, and now you've backed it out into another physics element that is now colliding, and so you end up into these massive unstable systems. And so the pink slip is there for the moment, right? We're trying to improve this. We've been tuning these values quite a bit since the beginning of the year. Every patch we adjust the density classes, the abandoned vehicle timers, and the physics intersection costs a lot. I feel like we're seeing a lot less reports now. It's kind of getting a lot better. I think we're getting into the sweet spot, but it's unfortunately not a magic just turn on density tracking, right? We already have density tracking. It's really about tuning the numbers so that it feels good, right? And that's the hardest part of this.
Folks in chat are talking about, just make it salvage gameplay. I want to I want to preface that Benoit's not a game designer. And when so those are game design decisions, but yeah, I mean, an obvious kind of thing would be have an abandoned ship generate a salvage beacon, for ship to come and grab and clean up and stuff. But I think a big part of that is salvage needs a bit more attention too. We need to make those materials worth more, because it's not just enough to generate the missions. We would need to make the materials that you get from those missions more valuable and mean more. And there are things coming around the corner. That's not true. There are things coming down the line. Let's just be down the line, around the corner. That's not accurate. That's not remotely true. Then
My heart started to increase then, but no, you let me down, Jared. You let me down.
things come down the line, like crafting and whatnot. They're going to need lots of materials from lots of different places and stuff like that. So mining, salvage, lots of opportunities there to link it with other gameplay systems and make people want to go out and salvage things.
I mean, the amount of abandoned ship, for example, like let's say we did that right tomorrow morning. We're like, okay, abandoned ship detected, salvage beacon goes up. There would be an overwhelmingly amount of salvage beacons, because the amount of abandoned vehicles is extremely high, right? And so balancing those contracts after that becomes kind of impossible in this current setup. That's not to say we're not going to do that, right? But we need to put attention on salvage to be able to do that properly.
No, Jared's Jared's mic isn't going out. I was just forgetting where I needed to put my mouth in order to use it. I'm a professional. Something. All right, so entity cleanup and freight elevators. Yeah. Another big bugaboo. This one's a relatively recent. Is not. It's been exasperated recently. We'll say that. Mm-hmm. Too many people, too many NPCs, spawn management, whatever the heck you want to call it.
My personal pet peeve.
People go.
Before we go into that one, I am going to call that for this episode. So join me on the next one, not to leave you on a cliffhanger. Give us a like, give us a follow. I really appreciate it. I'm trying to build the channel, and I can't do that without you. Drop anything in the comments about anything that you've experienced in the game regarding what we've seen. A little bit of a reminder, we've got the new t-shirt on the website. So link is in the channel for that. Join me on the section 3 of this quite long video. This is Cwazywabit. See ya. Big thank you for watching. I've been Cwazywabit. Like, subscribe, and all that other stuff. Also, consider joining the Patreon to help me actually pay my bills. Check out this next video for more of the same content. See ya.